Hey everyone, it's Dave here. I thought I'd do a video about the US election today, which is a week tomorrow. So that's what today's content is all about. So just before I start, if you do like my content and you want to see more of my videos, then hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell as well, so that each time I upload a new video like this one, you'll get notified. Okay, so US election. One of the most important, if not the most important election in any country, I think, for a long time. I personally hope and also believe and think that Trump will win this election fairly significantly and by a very healthy margin. So, there's a pretty stark choice facing the American people at the moment. And I personally think this isn't an election focused on COVID and how well or not Trump has handled the COVID situation. I also don't think really it is as some people are saying, a referendum on the Trump presidency and on Trump the man himself. I think it is an election where the American people have the opportunity to either embrace or outrightly reject socialism. Because I believe that the Democrat Party in America, much the same way as the Labour Party and the Lib Dems, and also, bizarrely and outrageously, the Conservative Party over here in the UK, have been hijacked by communism, by communists, and the filthy, poisonous, evil malevolence of communism. So too of the Democrats. Their alignment, their very close alignment with groups such as Antifa and Black Lives Matter, I think will strike fear and will appall so many Americans, particularly in the American heartlands, in the Rust Belt and in the Midwest. And I just don't think they're going to give Biden the chance to unleash his vision of what America could be on their country. Now I think Trump, in contrast, offers a completely different and more libertarian vision. Of course, we're always told that the left are the liberals, but they're not. They are anti-liberal largely now, I think, the left right across the developed world. Trump, the libertarian, has made it clear that he wants to open up the economy fully and roll back restrictions as well. If he is given the chance of a second term, he will then be unleashed and will be able to do that. So two very different visions of what could ensue once next Tuesday's out of the way. The reason why I think it's not going to be about COVID this election is because whilst Trump has to take full responsibility for the situation that's developed in America, as every leader in any country has to take ultimate and full responsibility, I think people are realising now that what's happened in reality isn't how the media have been portraying it. There's a lot of questions, and I think more and more people are beginning to wake up to the terrible conspiracy that this has been. Not that there hasn't been a virus, but that there's been a huge overreaction and it's a cover for something else. I believe that Trump is fighting back against that, and I think people are tapping into that and can see it. Whereas the Democrats, I think their real intention is to increase restrictions and increase the constraints on people's freedoms. Also, I think probably people can see that whilst Trump has to take, just as Boris Johnson in this country has to take ultimate responsibility for everything, the actual responsibility, the real picture is much more complicated than that, particularly with the way that the American political system works and the devolution of power away from the federal government to the individual states and the governors of those states. So that decision making was very much done on a state-by-state basis. So I think it's unfair to paint a picture whereby Trump has made all the mistakes, has to take all of the responsibility, and I think people could see that. The way that I call it Trump derangement syndrome, and I draw a parallel. The US and the UK are very, very similar culturally. The people are similar, the countries are similar. I draw a parallel between Trump derangement syndrome, led by hysterical media, and in this country, Brexit-induced hysteria, which is what I call it, which reached a pinnacle in this country with the online petition. They got 6.1 million signatures to cancel Brexit. We live in a world where everything's black and white now, there's no in between, and the media likes to portray Trump as everything. He can't do a thing right. He's racist, he's sexist, he's transphobic, he's homophobic, he's xenophobic, he's all the phobics. There's no honest discussion in the mainstream media around Trump's achievements. All that is done is focus on his detractions and then exaggerate them whilst refusing to acknowledge the positive things he's done. So, example, prior to this year, the amazing economic achievements that Trump brought about, including record low unemployment, high levels of employment for blacks and Hispanics, a pretty amazing foreign policy as well that has included opening diplomatic relations with North Korea, drawing the West's attention to the emerging and dangerous threat that China poses, and making it clear that he's going to take on China, and also not only not starting a war in the Middle East, which is the norm for any US president, often with the UK and the West's involvement. Not only has he not started a war in the Middle East, but he's brought about a peaceful negotiation between warring factions in the Middle East as well, which is a miracle, really. So I think anyone who paints Trump as a hawk, when he is really, as the evidence bears out, a dove, is being very incredibly disingenuous. His detractions, obviously, is he a narcissist? Maybe. Is he full of himself? I think so. Is he a nice man? Probably not. Does he understand this country? Yes. Does he understand the people of his country? Yes. Does he know how to strike a deal and drive a hard bargain in order to achieve positive solutions? Yes. And the biggest, the biggest probably feature that I would associate with Trump is the word authenticity. Is he authentic? Absolutely yes. And I think that is the main reason why people either respect him or admire him or like him. Authenticity. And I think it's because it's a trait that is in such short supply in the world at the moment, particularly in politics. He's not a politician. He is Donald Trump. And what he says he means. And I really do think as well that what he said he was going to do before the last US election, that he's tried and largely succeeded in doing. I think he understands his country, and he understands what makes America America, what makes America tick, what the American people need to hear, and what the American people need their president to do for them. And it's not gone unnoticed. And I think people can see through the media spin, the media lies, and the media propaganda about him. I actually think that Donald Trump is the most unfairly misrepresented politician of our era. I really do. I think he's going to go down in the history books as a great president, and one who was done a disservice by the media, by the mainstream media, who, in my opinion, are dominated by the cultural Marxists. So this election is an opportunity for the Americans to reject the dangers of socialism, which terrifyingly have crept almost unnoticed by so many people into life in so much of the world now. I also, just to digress slightly, I think that my hope for Trump winning this election will be that America is still the most influential country in the world. If there is a more libertarian stance taken by Trump, if he is unleashed in his second term and he's really able to roll back these restrictions, open up the economy, and be let off the leash, there's the knock-on effect that potentially could have on countries in Western Europe and other countries that are allies with America. I get the argument that some would say that Trump has been isolationist in his policies, and to a large degree he has, but he said he'd do that in the last election to the American people. But nevertheless, Trump is an Anglophobe. I think he admired Brexit, and he's made it pretty clear he wants to strike a trade deal with the UK. I think the UK and the US, if Trump wins this relationship, wins this election, that relationship between the two countries will be strengthened. And I think that you will see an influence on British government decision making as well, based on what Trump decides to do in America. That is my hope, that we will see some libertarianism returning to the UK. I really hope and pray, because what's going on at the moment is absolutely terrifying, horrifying. I'm appalled by it. So this election, right, okay, so just as in the just for me to say, first of all, I'm by no means an expert. I don't really know what I'm talking about, to be honest with you. When it comes to US politics, it seems pretty complicated. But I've been doing a little bit of research, and this is my take on things. So, just as in the same way that in the UK, where we have 650 parliamentary constituencies, where there are some that have more of a say in an election than others. So, for example, in the seat where I live, in Sefton, it's nearly always returns the Labour MP, and it did do in the last election as well. So essentially my vote, whilst not being, I would say it's not as important as other people's votes, it's not as decisive in deciding elections. So there's a whole swathe of seats in the Midlands, for example, where the constituencies there, they swing between Labour and Conservative depending on the election year. So they're the bellwether states. So if you've got a vote in those constituencies, then your vote is going to count for what's going to be more decisive in deciding whether it turns blue or turns red. Now, exactly the same situation applies in America, where you have some states that are nearly always blue, Democrats, and some states that are nearly always red, Republican. So much of the eastern seaboard, encompassing big cities like New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Washington, nearly always going to go Democrat, and then the entire western seaboard, so Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego, also Democrat as well. But then the southern states in the Bible Belt, and then much of the northern states and the Midwest, traditionally voting for Republican. But then you do have swing states which decide the elections, and those swing states decided the elections last time, and they're going to decide which way it goes this time as well. Now, each the US election is decided not on who wins the most votes, but on who wins the most electoral college votes, and whoever can get to 270 votes wins the election. Each state has a different number of electoral college votes. So big states like Texas, I think, has 40 odd. Medium-sized state Florida has 29, I think, and then smaller states have much fewer electoral college votes assigned to them. So it's those swing states that decide the election, and somewhere like Florida, which has a hefty 29 electoral college votes and swings between Democrats and Republican, and is on a knife edge this time. Probably, if that goes to the Democrats will win. However, I don't think the Democrats are going to win, because I think the situation in reality is completely different from that which is being portrayed by the media. So these swing states are being underrepresented in the polling that is being referred to in the media stories at the moment. I think they're over-polling in Democrat areas. I think there's also the phenomena where maybe people are telling pollsters they're not going to vote for Trump, whereas in fact they are, much as in the same way that pollsters won't hear from voters in the UK that they're going to vote for Tory because they're embarrassed to say, or they're scared to say, or they're frightened to say, the shy Tory syndrome. You've got exactly the same phenomena, I believe, in the US, with people probably terrified to say they're going to vote for Trump because they get lynched by the left-wing mob that are running rampant at the moment, and that need to be reined in, and that offer only poison, division, violence, and malevolence. So I think the situation in reality is far, far different to what the media are portraying. And I think in these swing states that are going to decide the election, Trump is winning. So he's winning in Florida, and I think he's winning in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin and Minnesota and Arizona. So they're the states, Florida, Arizona, and then a swathe of Midwest and Northern states that are going to decide this election. If the Democrats can turn 2 or 3 of them blue, they've won. If Trump keeps them, Trump wins. Trump can afford to lose one of those states and still win this election, but he'd need to keep all of the rest of them. However, like I say, I really do think I think that Trump has by and large impressed his base. I think he's expanded his base as well. There is a lot of evidence now to suggest that the youth vote is collapsing, and that the black and minority and Hispanic vote is going to lend itself even more, its vote even more to Trump. Also, then the Democrats are having a problem because one of their core electoral target votes is the 18 to 24 year age group, many of whom are in university and tend to vote for the Democrats, but many of whom aren't in university at the moment because of the situation that we've got. So I think maybe they're struggling to mobilise their youth vote, and I think they're turning off many of their other core votes, which is the black and minority, ethnic and Hispanic vote as well, because they simply don't speak for them, even they purport to speak for them, let alone the media who do not speak for them. I think increasing numbers of blacks and Hispanics are looking to Trump and saying that it's him who speaks for them, not the Democrats, and they can see through the Democrats, much in the same way that the voters in the northern working class areas of England, right across from Cumbria all the way across to North Yorkshire and up to even further north, could see through what the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn and his brand of socialism were offering, and hence why the red wall turned blue, which was an astounding victory for the Conservative Party. A Conservative Party who've badly let them down and let down anyone else who voted for them. But I digress. So yes, I don't think that it's looking good for the Democrats. There's also evidence as well. Their electoral strategy relies heavily on the mail-in ballots. The election's been started a couple of weeks ago, and they need as many people to be voting Democrat in the early stages of the election now. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that the Democratic base hasn't been mobilised enough, and that not enough of those mail-in ballots are coming in for the Democrats, because the Republicans are going to win the vote on the actual day. So combine the two, their strategy could well be failing here. But yeah, what does Trump speak to? As I said earlier, he's pro-business. America's a very capitalist country. It's a very patriotic country, and he is a patriot. And I do think he has the ability. He understands his country, he understands the mindset, he understands the wants and the needs, and he understands the people and what they want for their present, and he has largely fulfilled that. He's an economic libertarian, and I think he understands the public distrust and dislike of the mainstream media as well, and he speaks for them in so many different ways. So my prediction, I'm going to put my head on the block here. I always try and have a go at predicting elections. Sometimes I get it right, often I get it wrong. But I really feel that Trump is going to win this. I think that the media are, and to a healthy degree, I think the media are trying to spin the polling figures to intimidate people, intimidate the vote that they need in order for their party, the Democrats, to win the election, which is the black and Hispanic vote. They have to vote in sizable enough numbers in order for the Democrats to win. I think they're trying to do that, and obviously that involves the strategy of painting, portraying Trump as a racist, as a xenophobe, as someone who doesn't care about minorities. So they're trying to do that, and I think they're also trying to create a scenario whereby the polling lead for the Democrats is so large they're going to try and dissuade Republican Trump voters from going out to vote, because they'll think, oh, what's the point it's already sewn up for the Democrats. I think people can see through this though. I really, really do. Trump needs to win by a significant majority to stop the Democrat arguments of it being a fixed election, because that's what they're going to try and do. They are that hell-bent on power. That is what they're going to try and do. So I'm hoping for a very healthy Trump victory here. I think there will be riots on the streets regardless. The American flag's getting burnt and all the rest of it, not my president and all the rest of it. And I think the situation in America is perilous. However, Trump is not the divisive figure. The Democrats and the mainstream media and groups such as Black Lives Matter and Antifa are the divisive. That is the divisive groupthink, the backward, intolerant groupthink, not Trump. But everything this year has been subverted. And I think enough people can see that, which is why I think they're going to give Trump their vote again. And I think that not only will he win the Electoral College vote, I think he'll win the popular vote as well. So we'll see where we are. Fingers crossed for that. God help us if the Democrats and Biden wins and the socialist takeover of America will then be complete. And I think the world is going to be in an even darker place than it is now. But that's not going to happen. Trump's going to win. So there's my prediction. Stick my head on the block. Let me know what you think. And I'll speak to you soon. All right, bye-bye. See you.